For a game that's been trying to polish itself up since April, Cyberpunk 2077 is a rough ride. I was expecting something much bigger than what I got, which ended up being this sad combination of like Fallout and Saints Row with like some GTA and Mass Effect thrown into taste. You can't say that the following whinge is based on hype deflation, because up until about a week before the game's release date, I've been ignoring it. I did not care. My girlfriend's been talking my ear off about it, and I was like, that's great, honey, and then, like, it is what it is. But then something piqued my interest, and I got curious, and I had to check it out, and now we're doing a first impressions review because I've done about 5 hours of it, and oh my god. So yeah, I don't even have my Cyber Keanu yet, but I do want to do a first impressions bordering on review for two reasons. One, I put less time into Borderlands 3, and I felt the need to give my opinion on that. And two, I'm not being grabbed enough by the game itself to want to continue on with it, so it's failed. I'm sorry, it's failed. Despite everything that surrounds the game, I think that the game itself is kind of generic and basic. It's not taking any risks. And I think that that's exactly what Projekt Red was aiming for, and I'm more than happy to try and back that up. The story is that you are V, and V is whoever you want them to be. Character customization was one of the more celebrated features, and they did do a good job with that. Good job, not great job. Despite some very unique choices in hair and wardrobe later, the rigid adherence to gender binary is a weird choice for a game that puts punk in its name. Punk as in a culture that is meant to disrupt societal norms. But apparently we're going to stick with a societal norm that's considered outdated by 2020, so God knows what we'll be doing with the gender binary in 2077, probably chucking it into a dumpster fire. The hairstyles, makeups, and color options were good for base game. I expect that once modders crack the game open, we can all look forward to even more options, but the developers don't get points for something that modders will inevitably do. One of the features is being able to customize your genitals, an option that featured heavily in the advertising of the game and invited controversy, the same way that playing Fortnite with a child invites migraines. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. If I have a problem with this, it's that they don't go interesting enough with the customization options in the same way they do with, say, your makeup. Let me have a dick, but let me also give it a Jacob's Ladder piercing with LED lights. Anyway, your name is V, and if you're my V, you're a badass corporate career gal and almost definitely asexual because none of these romance options are good. After having been promoted or demoted or introduced or whatever, you and your large Latino friend Jackie skipped several months of characterization that I would have really liked to be involved with so that I could have maybe had a say as to who my allies are. Or indeed, eschew all human contact and become a cyber assassin. Not enough full frontal nudity in that line of work, I guess. You begin work of some description. It's unclear. It looked like a hostage rescue, but you shot a lot of people and got to one of the dumber sections of the game, which I'll get to in a minute. And then you do a series of mini-jobs, several of which required money for me to do, so I couldn't do it, because in order to make the money, I had to do the mini-jobs, but the mini-jobs were almost constantly requiring me to bribe. So, no. And then you lead up to a larger job that puts you in the possession of one copy of Keanu Reeves on a chip. Not nude, though, which is a disappointment. Okay, let's talk about something that isn't nudity. How about gameplay? There's a lot of railroading in the first section, which is to be expected, and I'm hoping that it opens up later. Combat is fine. It's really basic cover-based shooting with some hacking thrown in for spice that doesn't really do much when you start out, which I think is a missed opportunity. Looking over the upgrades that you get, none of them really seem to have any effect on the day-to-day act of shooting dudes. The UI is cluttered with a bunch of stuff that we don't need, not as clear about the stuff that we actually do need, and NPC support characters need to shut up, but what else is new? I swear I got a new phone call from Regina Jones every time I closed my inventory. And speaking of my inventory, you know you fucked up when I have to Google how to open up my inventory. Because it's not in the key bindings. I know that the standards are B, I, or E, but you know what else is standard? W to walk forward. And you know what's in the key bindings? Continuing on my whinge, I completely hate the music. I don't have anything against techno rap, but you would think that a game that featured more, metal guitars in its advertising would feature more metal guitars in its soundtrack. The game also doesn't really do a good job of letting you immerse yourself in the world even when you aren't being railroaded. There are a million new things thrown at you, new words, new concepts, new factions and motivations, and you're just kind of expected to know everything. One really galling thing about Cyberpunk is right there in the name, and I alluded to it earlier. Saying that you have a cyberpunk world implies that you have a world that's changing societal norms or cultures via technological implants, or just technology in general. In other words, societal norms are being challenged, and I don't see that here. I see them being reflected, I see them being maintained, and I see a lot of old-timey cyberpunk being ripped off. Philip K. Dick's entire literary work is being ripped off in big fat chunks. Blade Runner, which was based on his novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, The Man in the High Tower, A Scanner Darkly, all of these play a role in shaping the world of Cyberpunk 2077, much like they do just general cyberpunk, because Blade Runner was the granddaddy for that, I guess. I'm surprised that we don't learn that a cop is sleeping with his sister and that we're all part of her hallucination. The player's encouraged to round up criminals for the police. Last time I checked, the punk community and the police community don't really see eye to eye, given that the punk community is all about, challenging the establishment, and the police force is usually enforcing establishment rules and regulations and guidelines. Wouldn't it make more sense for someone who is the hero of a story of the downtrodden, or at least a success story in rising out of downtrodden status? Wouldn't that person want to shift some norms around, disrupt some systems? No? Please? God, please? In terms of reflecting and maintaining, one thing that I noticed that stood out to me that probably shouldn't have was the anti-homelessness spikes that are on some of the benches. Wouldn't we, as the hero of the downtrodden, want to do something about it? Maybe, knock some stuff over? Anything? But we don't. We just kind of go on with our day, and the selfish fuck you got mine attitude is kind of against what the punk community is about. One last thing about the nudity before I get to my last point. There's a scene kind of early on that I think my recording skipped out on, where you come upon a nude woman in an ice bath with a man. It's like your target for a mission, I guess. The woman is fully nude, and you spend a lot of time with your camera just directly on her tits the whole time. Now understand, I'm not bothered by this, but her tits are out and the guy next to her is still in his underwear. So they took the time to take her underwear off and her bra off, but not his anything. Is it that we're only allowed to see our own dick? What's the matter? Are you uncomfortable with having your dick seen? Is that uncomfortable for you to have your boundaries trodden upon? Or did you already know that Outlast used full frontal male nudity and did it way better to a much more shocking and horrifying effect?
Maybe Father Martin's man.
Maybe.
He looks nervous.
I would like to kill him.
As would I.
Or maybe it's just that all the developers with Red in their name are contractually obligated to show full frontal nudity or receive death by IGN reviews. No, really, this is a good conspiracy. Think about it. Red Barrels, CD Projekt Red, Red Thread. So we need Red Entertainment to hop on it so that we can get some full frontal nudity in a Trigun video game. The biggest problem with Cyberpunk 2077 is that it seems afraid to engage people with anything out of fear of losing them. The game is afraid to engage with its more interesting ideas of body modification and societal reform upon fear of losing a customer. They're afraid to embrace an anti-establishment stance because, shit, they're being funded by a corporation, someone's signing their checks, and it's probably not the person whose shoes they should be pissing on. They're afraid to make the gameplay different from any given first-person shooter, basically as far as I can tell, because they're afraid of trying something new. They're afraid of engaging the player because they don't want the player to see the cracks that are outside of their tightly scripted game, hence the railroading. And guys, we're seeing the cracks. You could have just put it off till February. I think that we'd prefer a finished product over a broken one. But the game isn't going to light anybody on fire on its own. The stuff surrounding it, the delays, the advertising, the hype, the Keanu, those are going to be the things that Cyberpunk is remembered for, not its actual gameplay. And in a way, that's really sad to me, because I wanted more for it. It would have been way better for the game to have been really, really good, and then we could have all loved it. Instead, it's so afraid to engage with us that it buries itself in mediocrity, and in the end, we hate it. And that's really sad. On top of all of their questionable business practices, none of it was worth it. I wanted it to be worth the wait for people. I wanted people to have a happy ending with the game. And the fact that a lot of people aren't is really sad to me. I'm not excited, I'm sad. Engage your player, CD Projekt Red. Let us in, and we will love you for it. And let us pierce our dicks with LED lights. This ended on kind of a downer. I do want to mention something positive about the circumstances of the game's release. Developers on itch.io are understandably pissed about how all of this has gone, especially considering that there are a lot of creators who are making incredible cyberpunk games these days that are a lot truer in their message and not using inflammatory advertising practices and questionable labor practices. The Be a Better Cyberpunk package is a pack of about 29 games from itch.io, all by indie developers. You get 29 games for the same amount that it would cost to buy Cyberpunk, just one copy of Cyberpunk, or there's a smaller pack where you get less games but you pay a lot less money for it. And you're doing a lot more for a smaller developer by buying their game than you are for a larger corporation by buying its game. I'm going to be linking the pack in the description, along with linking a game called Neofeud, which is by a indie developer who I follow on Twitter, who has been really vocal about all of the cyberpunk nonsense and basically why it's so shitty that this is happening. Speaking of indie games, I'm hoping to review one next week if anybody's still subscribed to my channel by then. If you're not subscribed, you should be. Especially if you're into me being really upset about independent games and just all of this kind of thing. And then I'm doing my best of 2020 list, upon which Cyberpunk 2077 will not be. I'm so sorry. But please subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.